I have one more session that I may have to talk about Joseph before we get to the Apostle Paul. And in this session, I want to just read from verse 46. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and he went throughout all the land of Egypt. And so when he went about all the land, he was putting an infrastructure in place so that he could do what he had given advice to Pharaoh to do. Now, in the 7 plentiful years, the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Now, verse 49 says, Joseph gathered very much grain as the sand of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. This is an amazing thing that Joseph did. When God gave him the interpretation of the Pharaoh's dream, he gave him the tools, he gave him the counsel, he gave him the wisdom, and he gave him the authority to carry out what the dream was. I want to make a few points, and the points that we're going to make about what happened to Joseph and the dream that God gave him when he was a young lad. So I want you to imagine, commentators on the Bible would put when his father Jacob put the coat of many colors on him. Commentators would put him anything from between the age of 12 and 15. So around about that age as a teenager. Here he was, 30 years old, and he's now the second most powerful man in all of the known kind of cultured world at that time. I mean, he had a long time. If we just take a middle ground between the two of them and say 14 years from 30, let's say he was 16 years old when he got the coat of many colors. If it's 14 years, that's a long time. If it's 10 years, it's a long time that he had the dream versus from the time that the dream came true. And of course, we know he went through many difficulties. There's a few things I want to make a comment on. The first thing, and I've shared this with you before, but as we lead into more conversations about this, it's important for us to underscore this. The dream that Joseph dreamed wasn't about himself and about his self-promotion and about his self-power and his self-authority and his position that he could attain in life. None of it was for personal ambition. He understood well when he had that dream that it was for something that was greater than his own personal desire. And as we go into future sessions, we're going to talk about how Joseph was never focused on what this could do for his personal identity, his personal self-esteem, his personal image, his personal status. It was not about him personally. If it was about his personal anything and about his own individual ambition and his own individual desire, well, there would have been many reasons for him at so many times to take a different set of actions. I mean, certainly if you say he had a personal something, if you were being seduced by a very powerful woman, a wife of a powerful man, well, some men would say, go for it. Other people would say, if you've been given authority in a captain's household, use it for your own leverage and get whatever you can out of it. Even with Pharaoh, when Pharaoh appointed him over all of his land, he could have used it for his own benefit and his own gain. But everything Joseph did was honorable, it was respectful, it was in recognition of the fact that God gave him the dream, that he was about the business of the dream that God gave him. And all of these are some might say, you're splitting hairs here, Pastor John. I'm not. Because the difference between the soul and the spirit, the Bible says that only the sword of God can differ between what is soul and spirit. And so what some people think is the Spirit of God is actually the soul, and some people think that what is the soul is actually in the spirit realm. And when we get to speaking about the Apostle Paul in our future sessions, we're going to enjoy talking around these points. Thank you for joining me.